Yeah, it was kind of cool because like everybody was dressed up as like country, like Western cowboys there, but then there was like a bunch of LGBTQ people there.
Let's go. Hell yeah.
A lot of pink cowboy hats.
It's basically Brokeback Mountain became a music genre.
Exactly.
And started a movement. I like it.
Yeah.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and welcome to another episode of A24 on the Rocks, the podcast where a group of friends get together, grab a drink, and attempt to watch and review every single movie in the A24 collection, which as of this recording is 153 films. That's right, we are just crazy enough to do it, and we are well on our way, 41.18% to be exact. That's not too depressing, right? I mean, that means we're over a third of the way.
We're
making our way, guys. It's great. We're doing it.
We're actually almost halfway. Wow.
Yeah, right? We're moving
awesome.
on.
Yeah.
But on this episode, we were reviewing the 63rd of those films, see the math, and, we're doing math there, the 2017 film Lean on Pete, or as Eric described it in the chat, the horsey movie. My name is Kevin K. Konkonachek, and I am your host for this cinematic journey, and I am drinking beer. Yep, I am drinking another Lion's Tail beer. That's right, this one's called Miami Vice. It's an imperial fruited sour, which pineapple, strawberry, lime, and coconut. Super delicious and super full of alcohol. But that's another story for another time. I am not alone. I have friends. Yes, friends are here with me. Friends, why don't you introduce yourselves to the people?
Hello, I'm Eric. I'm drinking a Featherbone bourbon whiskey from Journeyman Distillery, which is in a little random podunk town in southwest Michigan. If you drive from Kalamazoo to Chicago, you might see an exit that goes towards it, but they have very good whiskey, so I highly suggest it. Up next, we have my wife, Kelly.
Yeah, hey, it's me, Kelly, the better half. I'm drinking the other liquor that was in our house, which is silver tequila, of which label I can't remember because it's not quickly accessible to me.
I don't think you're the better half anymore then, Dan.
All right, it's up for debate day to day.
Whiskey tequila.
I will say the better half of my silver tequila is the juice that I'm mixing with it, which is strawberry and kiwi. Keeping it simple. Cole, what are you drinking?
I am drinking a Sigma More Spirit American Rye whiskey from Maryland. It is quite delicious. A little bite to it makes you feel alive, makes me feel good. Does that make me an alcoholic? Only time will tell. But up next, we got
Nobody.
Oh,
you're the last one.
shoot.
So
Right,
I
never
think
mind.
you probably had just the right amount to review this film.
Up next comes the show.
Power goes out and he
What a
starts
great
drinking
segue.
liquor.
Power goes out and you just have nothing to do,
Man,
and you
light
don't
some
want the
candles,
beer to go
drink some liquor.
bad. You don't want anything to go
And
bad,
here
so
we
you
are,
just start eating ice
reviewing-
cream.
We're all
and
drinking liquor
beer.
tonight. It's also a rare night
Except
where
for
we
me.
all drink liquor. Oh, wait,
No, I'm
shit,
drinking
yeah.
beer. I was just about to comment the one
Okay.
time I normally drink whiskey,
Yeah.
but I'm drinking beer.
All right,
What
all
the
right.
Just ruining everything.
No, it's okay.
A24 on the rocks.
Anyway, that's right. We are reviewing Lean on Pete, which is an emotional drama film directed by Andrew Hay, released in 2017 by A24. The movie is based on the novel of the same name by Willie Vlotten. Probably murdered that, but he wrote the book. It tells the story of a teenage boy named Charlie Thompson, played by Charlie Plummer, who embarks on a journey of self-discovery and survival. Charlie, a 15-year-old who recently moved to Portland, Oregon, lives with his single father, Ray, played by Travis Fimmel, who struggles to provide stability. Charlie's life takes a turn when he finds a job working for Del Montgomery, played by the one and only Steve Buscemi, a gruff and often dodgy horse trainer. Charlie forms a deep bond with an aging racehorse named Lean on Pete. As Charlie's circumstances deteriorate and facing the threat of losing Lean on Pete to slaughter, he makes a desperate decision to steal the horse and embark on a cross-country journey. With limited resources and uncertain prospects, Charlie searches for his long-lost aunt while grappling with the harsh realities of life on the road. There you go, folks. That is the general overview of this entire film. Now you have to listen to as we review all of those great things. I think that pretty much encapsulates it, pretty much start to finish. So the first question I have for everybody is, has anybody seen this movie before watching it for this podcast? Have you even heard of it before being tasked with this review? I saw
No.
Kelly shake her head.
It's a no and a no
Eric?
from
Nope.
me.
Yeah, it
Nope.
got great reviews, and I have never heard of this. Even I had to look, through obviously all the list of A24 films we're going to review, and that's the first time I ever heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said in the intro, you introduced kind of this movie as the horse movie, and
Yeah,
didn't really know
through
much
my
about
grasps.
it. I really do try to avoid trailers at all costs before these. If they've decided for me, they ruin the movie for me, regardless. But when I do host, I try to bring them back up. But we'll talk about the trailer here in a little bit. So we were all coming into this with completely wide open eyes, as they say. So let's talk a little bit about the basis of it before we get in there. So I did talk about it. It's based on a novel. Do any of you guys have any strong opinions on film that are based off of books? Some that you really like, some that you are like, maybe we should stay away. Just kind of a general on topic about film and books. Anybody want to dive into that?
I like that I don't have to read movies.
Oh, all right. So Cole's not so much of a book guy, so he likes the fact that he gets it all in front of him.
I'm a fan of watching films first and then reading books, actually. The times that I have read a book that either became a film or, vice versa or whatever, I usually like watching the film first and then reading the book. I don't know why. I just feel like I get more detail out of the book after reading it. The film is like the initial interest, and then if I really want to delve into a world, then I will read the book. But yeah, I mean, usually though, I think that film or books that are made into films, yeah, I mean, they can be hit or miss, but there's been a lot of good ones out there. Some of the best of all time, like 2001: A Space Odyssey. So yeah,
or No Country for Old Men. We had talked about that when we were reviewing it earlier too. Mm-hmm. Like some of these great films based off of awesome books. I don't know. I'm not familiar with Willie Vlotten's work at all. Apparently, he is a Portland institution. They really like him up there. He's written 5 novels and is a lead singer and the primary songwriter for the band Richmond Fontaine, which, you've got that going. So this guy's obviously got some skill. And apparently he worked pretty closely with Andrew Hay on the adaptation of this particular screenplay from the novels.
Andrew Hay.
Hey. I also don't really have too much of a strong opinion about books and movies. If they're done well, great. I also am curious to go back and to read some of the source material after the fact. I think that's always great. Oftentimes I think about fantasy, right? Look at the big novels that you can really dive into as far as, Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter that come up and things like that are adapted from books. But that's not really what we're talking about here. But I just didn't know if anyone had an opinion one way or another when it comes to that.
There are all those weird people that just think that, films just, they suck if they try to adapt a book. I don't know. Just because they can never do it justice or something. So
a lot of people just want to be haters about it. Obviously, you can't pack nearly as much into a movie as a book's ever going to have. I think the answer to that and what's becoming more popular is TV series based on books. So you can fit a book appropriate amount of content into a screen amount of content. Mm-hmm. But then you have the risk of a Game of Thrones situation. However,
I was just thinking about that too. I was like, you're right, because then they can jump the shark.
House of the Dragon, maybe he's going to make up for it. We'll see. Similarly in that, I'm going the opposite direction where 3 Body Problem I thought was a very good Netflix adaptation. So much so that I asked Eric, and Eric surprised me with all 3 books. So I'm going in the opposite direction this time where it goes series to book. So I just like that in all of these things, they can play off each other and help each other and create more lore for the fans.
I feel like we'd have to go back and look, but there are a decent amount of these A24 films, especially in the early part of these 2017s, especially even the 2016s, that are based off of novels that we weren't familiar with or didn't even know until we were breaking it down for these reviews. And I feel like that's happened more often than not, but there's a couple in there. I wish I had them off the top of my head. But there are some A24 films that are definitely based on the book. And maybe that'll be an episode. We can go back and look at that sometime and just kind of break down all of the different source material in A24. But I digress. Let's keep moving into it. Our opening scenes. Let's revisit a question I often like to get to when I am hosting, and that's a quick vibe check. So, Kelly, I know you just answered, but I'm going to start with you again. What were your initial impressions on our opening scene with Charlie? Just first off the bat as we open up and see him in his bedroom.
First off the bat, drab, depressing, poverty, cold, wet, gray. These are all one-word answers
Portland.
that describe everything that I got right there.
I love that. That's absolutely fantastic. Anybody else have any one-worders or any answers to that very first vibe on that initial open scene? Anyone pay attention to anything particular?
I think it nailed the tone of the whole entire film for the most part. I think it really set the kind of like the expectations, especially for like, I think we, mentioned none of us had seen it and I didn't watch anything. I didn't really do any research. If I don't know or haven't heard about it, I typically like to just go in blind, and it definitely set the tone and kind of nailed that rural kind of farm town feeling almost of just kind of the outskirts, middle of nowhere poverty type thing, even though they say it was in Portland. So I guess it maybe is very far outskirts Portland.
Yeah.
Right. For me, the first thing that I noticed as he was kind of unboxing were those football trophies that he pulled out, because that was it. That was the only decor in the entire room, was those meager small trophies that clearly were participation trophies or something. That it was just kind of like, this is all he has to hold on to, these small moments. And that was one of the first things I thought, because that also that bleak, drab depressiveness that Kelly had mentioned, it's also kind of was my first impression seeing that. I was like, okay, sad, skinny little kid who's holding on to something that, whatever that may be. So it's kind of what I was going with that. Eric, did you pay any particular attention to the scenery of the scenes outside of that? So we move on from his bedroom and then move on to the kind of introduction to his house and his dad, and then just kind of his circumstances as we kind of moved into those opening scenes.
Just, you could tell that it's a couple of dudes living there, but that the dad, he has nothing but beer and cereal in the fridge, and the whole house kind of reminisces that. I would say it's a very minimal house. There's not a lot there. And there's roaches in the house. Like, you can tell that he is a little neglectful of his child. Like, his child's definitely raising himself. And I was worried that we were going to get like an abusive dad situation. Turns out he wasn't abusive, but you can tell, he probably has alcohol problems. So, and the house reflects that. Right.
So as Charlie starts his day, Cole, we get him running, right? We get this scene of him with dawn breaking and kind of making his way outside and being around his surroundings there. What were your thoughts kind of as those scenes kind of opened up and we just got to see some of the scenery, especially with the lack of soundtrack and really taking the approach of hearing every footstep, every noise, everything? Kind of what was your impressions as they started us out with the way the styles of the film was going?
Yeah, I think they, again, just kind of continued that theme of kind of emptiness and minimalist, where, the he's just running down the streets. Doesn't look like it's necessarily the best neighborhood or the best place. There's not a whole heck of a lot around. It seemed like they had just gotten there, and the lack of music, I think, kind of, again, lends itself to kind of their social economic status in a way where they don't really have a whole heck of a lot. He doesn't have headphones. He doesn't have the luxury of a lot of these things, and he's just running for the sake of maybe he'll play football again. It's something that he enjoyed and he wants to keep doing, but he has no idea if he's ever going to get it again. And it's just very kind of silent and somber as you just kind of watch this kid cruising through the town and running.
And that's exactly right. Just cruising through the town and kind of seeing what was out there. I know what Eric had mentioned a little bit about Ray, Charlie's dad, but I want you guys to kind of weigh on your first impressions, only because he does turn into kind of being a pivotal focal point of kind of Charlie's development and the way the story goes. So, Kelly, what were your first impressions when that door opens up and we see the parental figure of Charlie and kind of some of the way that the film sets his character up without saying too much, but giving you all the clues that you may need?
Same like gut feeling, like Eric said. I figured, this is the kind of dad we're going to get. He's an alcoholic. But instead, I'm coining this new term for a character like this dad, which is an oxymoron. He's a wholesome scumbag dad. And that's the character that he ended up playing for me. I found him to be interesting because it's like he never grew up. And you can tell he still loves his kid a lot, but it's almost like he's treating him like a little brother instead of rising to the challenge of being a dad and taking care of your boy. And you think he's probably trying to make the best of what's given to him, but you don't really actually know. You don't get all of those things told to you. And same thing for Charlie. He's not really going to know what kind of choices his dad could or couldn't make. It's just where he is now. So I like what they did reveal to us, and I like what was shown to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, same question to you. What did you think about the way that they held our hand in giving us some story about Ray, but much more was given to you by other characters discussing him or talking about him or just being impacted by him?
Ray says he was a cook and he doesn't like making food, and that's so true. All the cooks in my life, they do not like, they end up hating food, and they don't really like making food after they get off work. They will always either eat out or make something super simple. And so you can kind of tell that's why there's like no food in the fridge. You know, he just doesn't like cooking. And then you can tell that he hasn't had a lot of luck with jobs, and he, I mean, obviously is single. He's banging some guy's wife. And I guess what other people say about him, I feel like we don't get much of that after our initial entanglement with the married wife. I feel like all we get is, our main character, Charlie, right? And he just kind of says things here and there about the life he's lived with his dad, but he says them to Pete, So right. I feel like we get very little story about him, but just the fact that his wife just, the mom of Charlie just left, and he kind of was never fully there for him, but was there at on the outskirts of his life.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to jump a little ahead here, but those scenes with Pete are absolutely impactful, where he's just talking to the sake because no one else is there to listen to him. And he fills in some of those gaps where he talks about having to give his dad space when he needed to go away for a while, or clearly the custody battle that he ends up facing with Margie and all of those things. But I just thought that his character was way deeper than the film gave us, and that was for an intent and a reason. And I think they did a great job of kind of keeping that mystery around him while still being very clear onto why Charlie loves him so much and why his eventual loss is such a big deal. But I am moving far too ahead. We're going to keep moving into the chronological order of this film. So as the film progresses, it is clear that Charlie, as he's running, he discovers a horse farm, a racetrack. The Portland Downs, as they say. And he, clearly has a strong affinity for horses, and that horses are going to be a strong plot point in this film. I've already referenced it on how many times during this introduction and beginning of the part of this conversation. But the trailer for Lean on Pete makes the viewer feel like they're about to watch a modern version of Black Beauty or another similar feel-good story about a boy and his horse. Well, what did we think about the decision to go that route in the trailer versus the actual story, for whom he personally felt like the horse was more of a vehicle for the entire theme and not so much the focal point about the boy and his horse? Do we think Pete was the story or just a vehicle? Kelly, you're first.
Oh, I'm the wrong person to ask, but I'll answer
Cole,
anyway.
you're first.
Okay.
This is what I'll say. It took me 15 and a half minutes to figure out why this movie was called Lean on Pete. For the first 15 minutes, I was really trying to figure out who the heck Pete was. And then, you got to the horse track and figured it out. I don't think the horse is the story. I think it's definitely a vehicle, and, I think a very kind of creative and cool way to almost do like an exposition dump of the kid and his relationship with his father and things without actually doing the flashbacks and whatnot that you might see in a typical film. And it kind of does it more in a almost like a natural, realistic approach. Because, I mean, you don't have flashbacks in real life. And, this kid clearly has, he cares for his dad, but, he's had a hard life and there's a lot of trauma, and he's just almost trauma dumping on this horse that he has a strange affinity for. So, and I think they used that very well, and it took quite a drastic turn that I was not prepared for throughout this film. And, I think it was a very good vehicle is what I would say.
All right, Kelly, you ready?
Yeah, what I was going to say is, I think, 1, having not watched the trailer, 2, going in completely blind, it's not the right question for me, but let's say someone's living in the year 2024 and they pick this movie out of the blue like we did. You take 15 minutes before you go, it's going to be a horse movie. And you have the little the little moment where you point at the screen and go, that's Lean on Pete. Now I understand. But like Cole said, it takes a twist, which is very indicative of A24. horse story it ends before the movie does. And then we enter Act 3, which is, in my opinion, a second movie. So I think that's been very interesting. And like Cole said, a horse is a good vehicle. I mean, they helped us build a lot of countries, and we couldn't have even made trains without them. So it is a good point. But also they made a good vehicle for the movie instead of doing exposition. It was good. I also sold advertising for a short minute for a horse therapy center. And that's such a healing thing for a lot of people that go through trauma, to let it out with a horse, because they're really sensitive animals. So I was like, this is a good match for Charlie. I see why he needed Pete.
That's very sweet. Didn't even think about that. Eric, anything you want to throw in on the vehicle of the horse and Pete versus, the entire theme of our film and all that jazz?
Just that horse therapy is a real thing, and like a lot of people find these connections with horses because they are, I would say, the moods they get in and like kind of their facial movements remind people of humans, and so they kind of apply like human like therapeutic characteristics to them. And also there's just like a certain kind of mindlessness about a horse at times too, and they always like feel like they can talk to them. As far as I know, my sister was kind of a horsey girl growing up. So, but yeah, like I think that Pete was not the movie. He was just like a way for Charlie to start healing from the trauma of his whole life and his what happens with his dad and what happened with his mom. It was his way to finally open up and start talking about it, because I don't think Charlie and his dad talked about it much at all in their own house. So I think that was
absolutely. Yeah. Without spending on the topic too much more, absolutely, I thought that the horse was a good way of moving the themes of this film, but it certainly was anything but the whole thing. It was definitely a small focus in the long run. But we are in the world of horses, and with every horse comes a horse trainer, or in this circumstance, the shiesty Del Montgomery, played by the ever so talented Steve Buscemi. All right, Cole, what did we think about...
You motherfucking cocksucking fuck! It's the first words we hear from him.
That's true, and that's what I wanted to ask. Cole, you hear Steve Buscemi's voice long before you see him, and you know exactly who it is from the very first syllable. What do we think about Steve Buscemi's portrayal of this character, and just your general appreciation for the man?
Yeah, I love Steve Buscemi, so I definitely grew up watching him, and his voice is definitely iconic. So as soon as it came about, I was just like, it can't. Steve Buscemi's not in this movie, and then he pokes his freaking head up, and you're just like, holy shit, it's Steve Buscemi. Yeah, I think he portrayed the character of Del very well. I grew up with horses, and I grew up next to a person that used to race horses, and they had like a horse track and all that stuff. So I was very familiar with kind of the ins and outs, and even the people that I grew up next to had a scandal related to certain drugs usage during horse racing, and they got banned for a whole year. There's a whole to do, and a lot of horses disappeared after that. So it's a very interesting system of the whole horse racing and the people there. We had horses, but they were more treated as like family versus property, and I think they kind of nailed that kind of ideology between the Charlie and Del and that and his character portrayal. And in a way I understand, because it is a business, but at the same facet, it's like you're dealing with live animals and things like that, and horses, like Kelly alluded to, definitely have strong emotions that are much more intelligent and in tune with things than you would initially realize if you haven't been around them. So, but Steve Buscemi always crutches it. He's great addition to this. Between him and Ragnar Lothbrok as the father, I mean, you can't go wrong.
Ragnar. Kelly, if Steve Buscemi offered you $10 to change a tire for him, would you do it?
In a heartbeat. I'd do it for free. I'd say, no, absolutely. I insist.
If you knew he was Steve Buscemi. If it was just some random guy at a horse track, I don't...
No one else.
No one else.
I got offered $20 when I was at the fair. I used to do 4-H, and I got offered $20 by some dude who was setting up a zoo at the fair. Keyword is zoo. It was a bunch of cages with a bunch of kangaroos and weird animals and stuff. But $20, So I did it. Little 12-year-old Cole went to work setting up cages for all these animals.
Kangaroos.
I got a free picture with the baby kangaroo, and then I got real sad about it later, realizing what I may have been involved in. But
oh Lord,
time and place. So.
Well, little do you know, you were the one in the cage the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
$10 and some breakfast. Yeah, you can have your wildest desires with Steve Buscemi. What do you think?
I mean, if I knew it was Steve Buscemi, I would do it. But yeah, like if it was just a random guy, $10 and what was the other part? Breakfast.
I think I got a breakfast, right?
Yeah. I would. Yeah. $10 and breakfast. Yeah. But like the initial vibe of him, I don't think I got a creepy vibe from him, at least. Just like very hard nosed. This guy has been beaten down by his work and everything he's done in his life. Just he's lived a rough life, and I could tell, like his body was kind of breaking down on him, and he needed somebody to kind of take up that grunt work of the horse racing industry. So yeah,
I got him as no nonsense, but I didn't necessarily think he was like mean. So
right. Or creepy, like in an advantageous way or something.
But like,
it's interesting.
He could be mean though. Like that's even what Charlie said.
But like you get that small scene right when his dad asks him where he's been when he comes back, right? And he's just basically asked Charlie, like, "You cool with it?" Like, is he on? Basically asking the viewer, like, "Are you cool with it?" Like, yeah, I'm fine with it. Dad's fine with it. We're going to move on. Like, it was very no nonsense approach to it, but I think it did ask that question whether there was an inappropriate line, not, any weird way, but just whether or not he was being a bully or taking advantage of Charlie or, what may have you. So I think that the movie did a good job of at least asking that question about that relationship without having to spell it out for you one way or another, which was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. All right. So Steve Buscemi asks Charlie right away how old he is, and he lies right off the bat. Cole, why is Charlie constantly lying about his age with this entire movie? He starts as 15, then he goes into 16, then he's 18, what have you, as he kind of develops. Is it a self-protection mechanism? Just kind of what were your thoughts on that way that he, used that as part of his dialogue?
Yeah, I think it was definitely kind of a protection, but also a way to kind of skew almost the narrative of his story to get kind of implemented into that system. So like, realistically, is there a big jump between 15 to 16? No, but when you hear someone's like 15, you're like, oh man, you're just a baby. And then you're like, you hear someone's 16, you're like, oh, well, this guy's ready to go to work. I started working at the local hardware store. You can drive when you're 16, right? And you're becoming a member of society. And then like, when he's talking to the other guys about being 18, it's mostly to avoid them, calling, CPS or the police or other people to come get it. Cause a 16-year-old or 15-year-old kid just rolled up in the middle of the desert at their house after, his truck broke down allegedly. Right. So he definitely uses it to his advantage, and I think Charlie's a smart kid. I think he's probably been in these situations, and he's kind of learned from his dad to kind of tell these quick white lies to get out of situations and to work it into his favor. I mean, you see him with the cops several times, or at the hospital where he is very quick to react and say the quote unquote right thing in that white lie at that moment to avoid essentially getting sent to a foster home or something.
Yeah, I mean, that was succinct. I couldn't have said it better myself. Absolutely. He, uses those in moments when he needs to be able to get through, and probably learn it from his daddy. That makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, there's also different labor laws between 15 and 16. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big thing. Like I just looked it up. Well, in Michigan, at least, minors age 14 to 15, combined hours of school and work cannot exceed 48 hours. And then minors 16 and 17, they can work 48 hours after school. So like they can work even more hours. And which, also like, I'm guessing Steve Buscemi, his character was just like, he probably has a driver's license. He's 16. So,
Yeah,
I
Kelly.
also think between those ages of 15 to 18 that you yourself or people that age can behave anywhere from younger than their age to much older than their age, depending on the circumstance and depending on the crowd that they run around in. And I think that's a large reason why we see Charlie stare at himself in the mirror so many times. And also why when he does, thank God, find safety in the end, we watch him actually kind of like go back to acting his actual age instead of rapidly aging before our eyes just in order to survive. So I think that's also why that age is constantly mentioned, because that is a time for all of us where some people are still playing with dolls and other people are having sex, maybe both at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very valid point. Oh man, you had something. I had something on the tip of my tongue. You ever have that where you have
Is
a
it
thought and
about
you're ready to
looking
say
in the mirror?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Yep.
I wrote down this. What do you think he's thinking about? Every time that they had that scene where it was clearly him having an introspective moment in the mirror, I said, what is he thinking about? What is that moment? Does anybody else have that? Does anybody have an answer? What do you think Charlie might have been thinking about? Maybe everything. Maybe it was up for the audience. What are you thinking about as an audience member? I know it's just very intentional, and I didn't know if anybody else picked on that. Clearly, Kelly did. Guys, what do you think?
Just thinking, what have I become? My sweetest friend. Everyone I know goes away in the end.
Trent
you can have it
Reznor.
all. My empire of dirt. No, but I'm
That
seriously
works.
thinking like he's
That
just
works
like
right now for this.
I think
though,
he's
right?
actually thinking like, what have I become? Like, look at me. I was playing football. I had friends in Washington,
Okay.
and then my dad decided to move away for a job. He died. Now I'm homeless, and he doesn't actually think he's homeless, but he is still thinking like, what have I become? Like that. Where's my life gone? I can't believe I'm here right now. I don't know if I'll ever find my aunt. I don't know where this is going to end. I think he's thinking like, what has become of myself? And he feels blame for it, even though he shouldn't feel any blame.
That was absolutely fucking perfect for this question. Yeah. Like, I'm just thinking of that entire song is now playing in my head, both Johnny Cash and the Nine Inch Nails version of it. It's just like, it's perfect. And he's a kid, it's like, oh yeah, what have I become? I'm just sitting here. Fuck you, Eric. That was good.
I think he also is reflecting, because especially when he looks at the mirror after his dad passes, I think that they did a good job with casting that he really kind of does look like the son of that actor. And I felt when I was looking at him, look at himself in the mirror, I thought he might be looking, how much do I resemble my father? How much am I going to follow his advice and his footsteps? And how much do I need people's help versus how much can I get on by myself? And I think he's having a fight internally of, I can do this by myself, but also I've seen what life looks like if you do try to do everything by yourself. So I think that there's some internal wars going on.
So there's also another lesson that we hope Charlie doesn't learn from his father, and that is that Charlie, his dad, seems to have a tendency to chase married women. And one time or another, it seems to have gotten the better of him. Earlier, we get a scene where Charlie is asking questions about what's a Samoan. And Ray basically describes him as a big motherfucker. And that's all you really need to know.
Play football.
Yeah. So the audience, basically, we are now treated to one night. We can only be described as the big motherfucker shows up at Charlie's house, tosses his dad through a plate glass window, puncturing his liver, and eventually leads to hospitalization and, as we've alluded to, untimely death. So, what do we think about the inclusion of the giant angry Samoan and the plot twist of Ray suddenly dying literally a third way through our film? Cole, tell me about the Samoan and what you thought about the way that they approached that whole scene and just, that part of the movie.
Yeah, I think the big motherfucker is kind of the inevitability of Ray's lifestyle and what he's like kind of done throughout his life and where it's going and what it'll eventually lead to, whether it is a Samoan or just anything in life that basically could lead to your untimely demise due to the choices and decisions that you've made that might not be the best pathway that he's kind of laid out for himself and his son. And he never really grew up. He's keeps making poor decisions. And I think that was just kind of the culmination of it all. And I also think that, this is something that small farm towns definitely seem to be, blue collar workers kind of littered with this stuff. I remember when one of the first projects I worked at in Vincennes, Indiana, one of the operators I worked with, he did not show up one day because turns out he was, banging some dude's wife, and the guy found him at home, and they got into a big brawl, and he ended up going to the hospital, and he was in the hospital for a couple of weeks, all because of very similar situation, very blue collar farm town vibe. So I feel like it was just kind of the culmination, and then of his lifestyle, and it also kind of pushed Charlie even further into just his journey, so to speak, of self-discovery and trying to almost get back to his fondest memories of his childhood, which is his aunt, right? So that's kind of my interpretation, I suppose.
Eric, what did you think about the death of Ray?
This film kept on throwing wrenches in what I thought was going to happen, which is, why I like it. And in the end, we'll talk about overall all the wrenches they threw in. But this particular one, I kind of saw it coming when they mentioned, this, guy had a husband, this woman had a husband, even though they're estranged. I saw the jealous ex probably doing harm to him. I didn't think he'd actually die though. And when he did, I was, okay, this film's going in a whole different direction now. Charlie's pretty much gonna be homeless. Of course, he won't want to go back to his house. That's where the scene of the crime happened. And there's no way he could ever go back there. And, I think this film, it kept on leading me into new directions, and it kept me on my feet. And, I think it was a good choice to do it, to have him, pass away, because I think it introduces a whole different narrative to the film.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that my brain told me there was a possibility when they mentioned the sepsis and they mentioned the severity of it, but I also thought he was actually going to die right there on the grass, as he was, holding him. Yeah. I kind of thought that was going to be the case and just be like, all right, kid, now what do you want to do? And then he runs away. But I actually enjoyed that they kind of I didn't enjoy the fact that they strung him along, but that he showed so much dedication to his dad as he was still trying to traverse all his own journeys. I thought that was a pretty cool thing. We kind of glazed over the fact that after Charlie accepts the $10 from Dell to change the tire, as we jokingly talked about a little while ago, he then turns out that he's going to help Dell long term with the horses and starts immersing himself in the horse world, as they say. And there's a lot that goes on to that whole thing. But as Charlie starts processing the death of his father and begins to learn the truths and the realities of that horse racing world, and the horse that he's kind of begun bonding with, which we've mentioned, his name is Lean on Pete, which I thought was a great name personally. I think that's a great name for a horse. I really enjoy that. And for the film to use it as we talked about already, Pete being that vehicle, and to lean on them and to use that as a big thing. I just enjoyed that as a title and the name of the horse. Anyway, he's beginning to bonding with that horse, and that horse, unfortunately, is due to be put down if he loses another race. That's just the reality of what happens when a horse gets older and starts losing. Coupling this with Dell's propensity for cheating by shooting up the horses with drugs, as Cole alluded to, happens in real life, and then fleeing before he can face consequences, all of this cold-hearted reality and this callous approach kind of has Charlie facing a very tough decision. Cole, if Lean on Pete was your horse and you were a 15-year-old kid without any parents, would you also steal him and attempt to cross country with no money and no plan?
15-year-old Cole probably would not.
I think... All right, what about 30 whatever Cole?
Oh, hey,
or 20 whatever.
Hey,
I don't even know how old you are.
I got 2 more days till I'm 30, so let's slow the roll.
Happy birthday, buddy.
Welcome to the end of your life.
Yeah, no kidding.
Only downhill from here.
Yeah, I think
wake up feeling
given
a
the
lot
circumstances and in the mindset that I am now, and if I knew that I really had nothing but this horse, and I had just lost my father, no idea who my mother was, the only other family member that I liked or had ever really known or had a relationship with, my aunt, is unknown where her location is. Yeah, I probably would. I'd probably get pissed off because the 2 adult figures in my life beyond just my father that have kind of shown me some type of relationship, kind of just like laughed in my face about something that I clearly care about, I would, get pissed off and just say, fuck it, I'm taking this horse. Fuck those people. Like, this is all I have left. So I definitely understand why he did it. And again, that scene with him leading the horse into the trailer and then pulling out the security guard. He's just such a smooth operator with some of his lies, and it's definitely, again, leads back to it's not his first time, not his first rodeo, some may say, in terms of stretching the truth or doing a little white lie to get into the situation that he needs to get into. So
Eric, question for you: after he steals Pete and goes about the rest of the film, why do you suppose they made the decision not to reintroduce Steve Buscemi's character Del or Bonnie or any of that, and it was a clean cut? That was it. You never see them again, and it was never a callback. Why do you suppose they included that, and how intentional was that?
I mean, I think it would have just set back the whole story of him finding his aunt, because then he would have went to prison, he would have went to juvie, would have been in the child welfare, system, and he kept running away from the police the whole film, and he did not want to become an orphan or just another person in the system. Because I think he knew that if he went into the system like that, then he might not ever find his aunt. He doesn't believe, he doesn't have any trust in the system to help him. And I think probably because it never helped him before. I think that if you reintroduced all those characters, then that kind of would have put an end to his journey to, go find his aunt, but then also like go through all these tough situations. And I think it's realistic too, because I do think that if you abandon the car in the middle of the road and just go like wandering through the Oregon landscape with a horse,
who's gonna find you? Honestly.
Yeah, like you're definitely, he's like wandering through like national parks or people's backyards and stuff, like on farmland. So I believe that that could be a believable thing too. So
realism is important, right? For sure.
Yeah.
Kelly, as a lover of all animals, was this film particularly hard to watch compared to some of the other ones that we've seen, with just the approach that they had to, his relationship with this animal?
Thank you for acknowledging me. Of course, I do love all animals equally, some would say. So it was hard to watch when he pulls up to a diner with a horse in his trailer and orders 2 hamburgers to go. Make the connection, brother. If you love a horse so much, you know what's really similar to one? That beast that you're eating. Also, cows would make great friends. Also, you can lean on them. They're like big dogs.
They can cry. They literally can have tears. They have tear ducts.
So for that, I would like to think that I would do the same thing as Charlie did, because it is worth it to try to save an animal if you can, especially when you got, at his point, nothing to lose. Like, you're going to get caught or you're not. So maybe just run for it and try to save your friend. I align pretty like lawful neutral, and it would be breaking too many laws. So I know you didn't ask me the same question you asked Cole, but I would just feel too guilty not to say that even though I would love to think I would be that heroic and dumb, I wouldn't be able to do what Charlie did.
Yeah. I want to have the viewer or the listener think about, like, what if he was like just randomly inserted into like a dog fighting ring, and then he got really close to a dog and then walked away with a dog? Would you do that? Probably, right? Could go save a dog. I think that horse racing can actually almost be as brutal of an industry, even though the horses aren't fighting each other. These horses, once they're used up, they just get murdered because they're too much money to take care of. So it's a really brutal industry, and I can empathize with Charlie there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's a reason I kind of wanted to ask about that too, because it definitely makes you, the film begs that question. Bonnie, the jockey, mentions how many times they're not pets. You can't make the pet. You can't make the connection. And that's not a new theme for film, like not getting connected to a work animal. But in this particular case, when your main protagonist is so young and so impressionable, it really just makes everything just feel that much bigger and feel that much more emotionally invested in the whole thing. All right, so we're moving on. The second act is coming around, and now Charlie is alone with Pete in the wild, right? So he's decided that he is no longer going to stand for the atrocities of the horse world and is going to take Lean on Pete out. Doesn't really have a plan, doesn't have any money. He's just going to go take Dell's truck and keep driving. But we get a wide variety of some cool landscapes, some camera shots, and overall a beautiful portrayal of the United States as we see Charlie traversing the wilderness as well as some small towns and things along those natures. So, Eric, I do want you to kind of throw in, and Cole, you afterwards here, what do we think about the cinematography in general of this film? Kind of what are some of the notes you took as you were taking this one in from a video element?
It was really beautiful. Wouldn't say that it's kind of like your average A24 cinematography where you have a lot of these like poignant close-ups that feel like portraits and photographs. But I would say that just the shots of like the sweeping like Oregon landscape and just a lot of the like rural farmland that they were showing, it felt like a Western almost. It's not a Western film, I would say, like just by genre, but it did feel like the cinematography was kind of like an ode to Western films in a way. And I really enjoyed that part. They did a great job there. So
Cole, you next. What do you think about the cinematography and some of the scenery that they included?
Yeah, I think the scenery did a lot of the heavy lifting for the cinematography. Not to say that the cinematography was bad by any means, but it was a lot of like just wide shots, open views, and like some very beautiful parts of the country that you might not be exposed to, especially all of us being the Midwest gang, so to speak. So definitely,
I lived in the UP.
It's pretty Midwest.
Yeah, it's still not.
I know, but like I've
desert.
seen sweeping rural landscapes that are very beautiful. That's what I'm saying.
Don't pigeonhole me, Cole.
But it's it's a very.
I've seen a tree or two.
Very, very beautiful. I think it doesn't necessarily fit into the A24 cinematography. Not a lot of like super saturated shots or unique angles or anything like that, but they do. I think get justice in terms of what they use as the cinematography and like some of the the following shots of him running and then like the mirror shots that Kelly had alluded to earlier, and some of those I think added to it. And just overall, I think whoever was in charge of the like shooting locations did an excellent job and really nailed it in terms of what to expect and what they needed.
Kelly, I want you to throw in on cinematography, but I also wanted to ask you particularly about the pacing and the structure. What did you think about the pacing of this film, and kind of did it keep you engaged? I know, Eric, you had mentioned that it kept you on your edge of your seat, kind of it was moving. Did you have a similar experience to your other half?
Okay, cinematography, part one. I think that it wasn't outside of A24 realm, but you got to think outside of... When you think A24, for me, I think like Everything Everywhere All at Once at this point. And I think fast,
Moonlight.
Colorful, neon, Moonlight, all this kind of stuff. But there's also movies like The Witch and like It Comes at Night. And I feel like Lean on Pete could fit somewhere in there. Just because when I'm thinking back of this movie in my head, most of the color story is shades of gray that are cool toned. So it did a good job of keeping me feeling both that temperature and that like dreariness dread. But there was also areas of close shots and bars with just like a luminous source of light that was really warm and gave us the opposite side of the color wheel. I see when I'm thinking back on this movie, like there's a lot of cool shots. You can't have a horse race and not be like, wow, what an amazing scene. That's always going to entertain me like a car race will. But when I think back on this movie in my head, it's a very like color rich kind of story. Even though it just uses muted and dark tones a lot, it does a good job of showing a great depth of scale within those shaded tones, which made me think of It Comes at Night, which, as you guys know, I really like that movie. There's also something about movies and diners when it comes to cinematography and this whole like color temperature kind of setting that I'm talking about. There's a lot of diner scenes in this movie, and diners are, I don't even know, it like goes together like an ice cream sundae. There's something about a diner scene in a movie that's great to like carry on
Like Moonlight.
the story, like Moonlight, to force interactions closely between people and have good dialogue. And I think it kind of makes everyone feel cozy and nostalgic, which is how you want to feel when you're watching a movie. So I kind of was picking that up too, where I was like, why is diners a reoccurring motif? Okay, pacing and structure. I think that this movie did awesome at pacing and structure. Even though it broke a lot of my expectations, that I think is a good thing. But it was like a proper play. It felt like there were 2 intermissions and then the same cast came out and did a whole different story. And I think that they did a really good job with it. I was really engaged the whole time. No bad notes for me on pacing and structure. It was really good between action and introspection, and well done.
Excellent. Anybody else want to throw in on the pacing or any of the other cinematic elements that we see in this film? Going once, going twice.
I would
All right.
say that, when he gets inserted into the homeless population in, it seemed like a college town in Oregon, maybe just a really poor town, but yeah, it almost felt like a whole different film. And I think I kind of liked it, though. I think that we went from kind of almost a Western feeling film into, okay, this is going to be a film that is going to be investigating youth homelessness and people that are thrown into these situations, and they don't want to become part of the system, and, or, you know, like the difficult choices they have to make just to survive, and like survivalism. And I thought that was actually like a really just good portrayal of like a kid who is forced to be homeless and like the tough decisions they have to make. And I didn't see the film going that way. Even after his dad died, I was like, okay, this is going to be a film about how this kid and this horse, they recover together, they survive together. And in the end, they're the ones that like carried each other through this rough time. But no, something happens to the horse. I don't know if we want to get there yet, but
We'll get there shortly.
It just turns everything on its head. And I was like, yeah.
So this next scene I want to chat about is, it felt kind of random at the time, but the more that we talk about the entire movie, especially that last part where Eric just talked about something about, you know, carrying your brother or being there for somebody as you kind of go through this process, we get the scene with the veterans, the veterans of war that have come back and that are just kind of in that house playing video games, waiting for someone to come cook them dinner and to tell some war stories. And it was interesting to me. Obviously, it was there because they needed a place for Charlie to get some water and to have some respite and to kind of, recharge and reach out about his dad. But there was also some interesting dialogue in those scenes and some circumstances that we see, about themes in general when it comes to alcoholism and abuse and scenarios that you find yourself. Cole, talk to me a little bit about these scenes. Did you kind of felt that it felt natural into the progression of the theme of the movie? Why do we think it existed? Kind of what those characters looked like? Just generally your thoughts on this, 10-minute scene that we have of Charlie finding these guys in the middle of the desert.
I think that the scene necessarily, I don't think it added to the story of the film. I think it was kind of an offshoot and something that maybe the director or the writer wanted to kind of insert some of their opinions. This film came out in 2017? Yeah, so this is, definitely kind of during the outfall of obviously everything with Iraq and Afghanistan and all that stuff. And you have these veterans coming back and, you have these like red-blooded Republicans that are, talking to these veterans about, it was all worth it. You guys did great things and you upheld democracy. And these two guys, probably signed up for thinking that they were going to fight for America and for freedom. And all they saw was, their buddy get a concussion so bad that he can't talk and lose his legs, and watched, a young woman get blown in half. And they didn't really have anything positive or to say, like, it's not like we rescued a school, an orphanage full of children from, Al Qaeda. Like, war is not like that. And I think, it added that and brought some of that realism to it. But did that add to Charlie's story? I don't think so. I think it was just kind of a quick introspect about war and all that.
Right.
The only thing it really did add was the granddaughter of the guy that showed up. I can't remember her name. But, you know, just kind of showing another form of, you know, abuse that does occur, especially in areas like that. And she has that one line about where Charlie comes up to her and asks her, you know, why does she let him treat her that way? And, you know, she responds with, you know, when you have nothing else and he's the only one, you're just kind of stuck in a way, right? Like she's
when you don't have anywhere else to go, you're kind of stuck. That's
exactly
what she says.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, she is a child just like Charlie, and her circumstances have just led her to this situation, and you don't have very many options but to kind of just accept it in a sense, and you know, hope that it gets better once you get older and you can escape, because she just kind of feels stuck. And it's sad that they're put in that situation, but that is kind of the story that you hear a lot about in a lot of especially rural communities, for sure.
Absolutely. Kelly and Eric, same kind of thing. Do we think there was more to be taken from these scenes, or was more of a time filler or an attempt to lay on some more emotions with the inclusion of the bullying, the abuse, and the body shaming?
I think, yeah, what Cole said was pretty succinct. I feel like it was just a moment to give commentary on current events from either the author of the book, because I haven't read the book, or directors of the movie, but either way, still valid. I think that they were realistic depictions of any veterans who do come home, especially when they live in a rural area. It made me both happy and sad to watch them so openly talk about the things that they saw at war, because I'm glad that they're sharing it, but also it's so awful that that's the stories they bring home. And I really liked our character. I wish I remembered her other name, but she's the other woman or girl in this case in this movie. And she just shows another perspective of being in a similar situation like Charlie was, which it's just different effects and different cards that were dealt. But I'm glad that they have like a real human connection together. It also serves as a little bit of armor, because Charlie, I guess, would have an option to go join the military, and they kind of explain why that wasn't really an option for him. So that scene uses itself to explain that as a reason that he might not want to take that route.
Absolutely. All right, so here we go. I'm going to be respectful as possible, but this scene, we've been dancing around it this whole episode. But Lean on Pete gets a little spooked, gets a little scared, breaks his harness, and has a run, and unfortunately has a fatal collision with a four-door sedan. Eric, what was your reaction to the scene? Did you laugh? Did you gasp? What was your reaction? Lay it on me as Lean on Pete is hit and killed by a car.
I gasped. It was surprising as hell. I did not think they would kill him that early. Well, I think it was like an hour and a half in, and it's a 2-hour movie, but still, you think like these kind of films, you know where they're going, like the child and the horse, they're gonna have a last scene together, and then it's gonna be like, we got each other through these tough times, you and me, bud. And no, it didn't happen. Pete got just killed by a car out of nowhere, and yeah, I gasped, and it took me a little bit to like reel from it and just be like, do I like this choice? You know, like that. Basically, there's going to be a whole new film right after this, in a way, a whole new journey and story for Charlie. But I think I do. I think that this film could have fallen into like a stereotype of a boy and a animal film, and it didn't. And I think I like the choice to do that.
All right, same question to you guys. What was your reaction to untimely death of Mr. Pete? Cole?
Very shocking. Was not what I thought was going to happen. Also, that like Plymouth Neon or whatever car that was, that thing is rock solid, because you know, hitting a deer is going to destroy that thing, let alone a horse. Like that thing,
yeah,
is
full-blown horse,
a tank.
Straight on.
But no, super surprising. And even after Pete got hit by the car, I was like, there's no way Pete's dead. He's going to have like a lame leg, and Charlie's going to, you know, get him back together, and they'll end with them running in the field together or something. No, just like 10 seconds after it, Pete's gone. And next thing you know, it cuts to the cops, you know, asking him about the horse, and they're covering it up, and like Pete's gone. That was very brutal. And I paused the movie and I was like, is this the end? And there's still like 30 minutes to go. And I was like, I don't even understand. I don't even know where you could go from this. Like, this poor kid is just getting hammered left and right with just, soul breaking, sadness from his father to, these potential mentors he had to now his really only companion that he had left, that he had just like divulged his whole life story to, gone. And so it was very gut wrenching, and I was not prepared for it. But I think in the end, I think it like Eric said, it kind of changed the expectations, and I think did a better service to the film with the, how it wraps it all up and where it goes from there.
I was preparing to ask Kelly a question about the shifting in act, but you've already answered that multiple times in this film about how you enjoyed the way that the film moved the acts. So I think that's so naturally poetic that I was lining up to ask you about these shifts and these feels. And the movie did a really good job of kind of just making that so apparent that it was something we wanted to talk about. Did you think that the editing and the writing of those elements had anything to do with the way that was shifted, or it was just kind of the natural progression of the storyline that did that more for you?
I was reflecting on it when Cole said he paused it. 30 minutes left. Like, what a crazy choice for this movie to do that. But life does go on after a loss. And if it's also survival on top of that, it has to go on even more so. So it's such an interesting choice from writing, from editing. And I don't feel like, editing-wise, it felt different after Pete was gone, because it felt faster and it felt grimier. I mean, obviously, setting change aside, the pacing of it, I think, went a little faster. It's also becomes more dialogue heavy with interactions from others instead of a lot of solo time. He doesn't really get that solo time back until the end of the film. Pacing wise and life wise, they made the choice to kind of cut that up quicker between scene to scene to scene. And then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And it's just instinct kind of for him to survive at the time. So it makes sense to edit it the way that they did for that third act. Did that answer your question? Absolutely,
it did. Okay. Yeah, no, that was exactly what I wanted to hear. Speaking of the third act, Eric, I want you to talk about a little bit about the character of Silver, played by Steve Zahn, which is our transient drunk. What did we kind of think about his inclusion in the story? What was his purpose in the film? And what did you think about kind of his impact that he had on Charlie?
I think that, in those like small, college towns, I feel like the homeless population, they all kind of know each other. So Charlie obviously inserting himself into this town, he's going to at least meet one person that they're going to, they're going to try to see who he is and feel him out, see what they can get from him. And this ends up being Steve Zahn. And I really love Steve Zahn. He's a great actor. I think it could have been a whole lot worse, but Steve Zahn, he was just a drunk and probably bipolar. It seemed like he had very, very shifting moods. And he tried to help him out. I felt like when he was sober, before he was in a mood, I'm going to see what I can get from this kid. He did try to help him out legitimately, I think. And then his whole mood changed when he got drunk. It was a really good, like I was saying earlier, showing of how being homeless in these kind of cities, though, you're survival of the fittest, but in a whole different way, where you're having to survive thinking about how to not get murdered as opposed to where you're going to eat next, and how to not get robbed. And, Charlie is just kind of living on the fly right now, seeing what he can do. I think that the introduction of this character is, again, another good vehicle to show the realities of what it's like to be homeless in a certain area. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Cole, do you think you would have it in you to take a tire iron and assault someone who just stole all the money you had left in the world?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. No, I mean,
cool. I just wanted to be sure.
Let this be a warning, listeners.
Yeah. If you take my last especially after everything this kid has been through, and he finally gets a break. Like, that painter pays him probably more money than he's ever been paid in his lifetime. Like, and he gets this moment of joy, and he goes back to this, this couple that has shown him kindness yet again, and it just like flips, and he, they take his last bastion of hope and kick him out. It's like, yeah, hell yeah. If I was in that situation, I got nothing else to lose. Like, what do I have? I have absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. You took the last thing I had. And, if I found myself with a tire, 100%. I would be, as soon as that happened, he got kicked out, I'd be smashing those windows in a heartbeat and letting
This movie did such a good job for me of subverting expectations, in the sense that even when he was breaking into the already broken in car to open the trunk, I was like, what in the world is he possibly going for?
He was going to go sleep back there.
Right, exactly. I was like, there's no way this kid is anything violent in him. But when he grabbed the tire iron, I was like, holy shit, they're actually going this route. And I'm glad that they did.
Even then, I thought he was just going to loosen all the tires, because it would have been a full circle moment from the first thing he did.
Like, bitch, you can't drive to the next place. Your tires are on the ground. Yeah. Nope, he's just going to go break his teeth off instead.
Yeah, that was shocking.
Oh, Lord. All right, so let's wrap this up a little bit. We're getting towards the conclusion of our film. During the entirety of the film, Charlie is asking about and searching for his father's sister, his Aunt Margie. It is alluded to that Margie and Ray had a falling out earlier, that Margie tried to adopt Charlie, and it's clear that Charlie believes that he will be safe if he can find Margie. Tracks down her old employer, really goes out of his way to try to be like, well, I mean, wouldn't you? I guess it's the only choice he has, the only place in the world he might go. Otherwise, he's going to end up on Fairfax Avenue with the crack addicts. So, Kelly, what did you think about this beam of hope idea that kept Charlie kind of going and guiding him throughout all of our three scenes? We get it referenced in 1, 2, and 3, and we finally kind of get that conclusion. What did we think about having that as a plot device and just an overarching theme for our film?
Not to be the biggest cheeseball in the whole world, but watching a horse movie will do that to you. It goes to show how much just a little tiny beam of hope can power you through some really, really tough times. I was fully subscribed after what we witnessed in his story for Margie to not be around for any reason. I just was like, that's not actually going to be there. But that's because I had given up hope and I didn't have lean on Pete in my life. Charlie was never going to give up hope. So I think that that's an overarching tale of just like, don't give up. And I feel also that even if Margie wasn't around, Charlie still wouldn't have given up. He would have thought, hopefully, of another plan, but he didn't need to. You can keep a story like this simple to get the point across, and they did a good job of that. And thank God Margie was the way that she was. Shows that a little bit of hope can get you there in the end. Thanks, Pete.
Love it. All right, Eric and Cole, we talked about this a little bit as this beam of hope leads us to this long lost aunt, and the film finishes up with what seems to be an elusive ending for some A24 films, and that is a happy ending is actually found. Charlie is reunited with his aunt and seemingly lives happily ever after. So, Eric, what did we think about this particular ending? Was it gratifying? Did you enjoy it? And did you wish it ended any differently? And then Cole and Kelly, you can answer the same question after.
I don't. Besides the fact they used an R. Kelly song at the end in folk version, but because I don't like R. Kelly anyway.
Really? Why?
Wow. Yeah. Let's tell us more about why we don't like R. Kelly.
Yeah.
Kelly.
They did a great job of him finding his aunt and still making it seem realistic. Like, he remembered where she worked, and then he asked somebody there that, like, oh, hey, do you know where she might have went? I was really hoping they didn't go down the path of he just, like, randomly walks up to her on a random street, somewhere in this random town in Wyoming, and he's just like, oh my God, there she is, I'm saved. No, they actually did a good job of, like, setting up the story to make it seem realistic that he would find his aunt. He asked somebody where she used to work, where she probably works now, and goes to the library. There she is. And just that hug at the end, him saying just like, if I were to be arrested, will I be able to come back here? I think these are all just really realistic things, and they make they make the story fledged out, and they make like, you know, the writer of the book and the screenwriter seem like they really thought about all other options. And that's like something we keep talking about, like in films, is just like quality control, but like also just making a story seem realistic, to really give a poignant ending to a film. And I think they accomplished that here. I don't, you know, for the story that they were trying to explore, I don't think there's another ending that I would have enjoyed more. Even, I mean, Pete dying, I felt like we would have probably had to forego the whole like city scene, because you can't just carry a horse around in a city. But, you know, like I was thinking like one other way they could have done it is like, you know, they let Pete go on at the end, or they give him to somebody who might actually care for him. But, you know, that might have been a little too cheesy at the end. I think that him having to lose Pete and then find his aunt, I think that seems a little more realistic in a way, and I think it carries the end home even better. So
yeah, 1,000%. I absolutely loved the fact that there was a happy ending. It seemed like made all of the trauma and all of the emotions before that worth it and validated, and I thought that was just real neat, as they say. Cole, did you have anything you want to throw in there at the end?
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed the ending. I was glad to see that. I was definitely afraid that she was going to have her husband come home and he was going to be like an alcoholic drunk or something and abusive.
Yeah.
But when she said that he's not around anymore, it was almost like a sigh of relief. And you could see that even on Charlie's face, which that actor did, I think, a phenomenal job playing Charlie throughout this. But like the ending where it shows Charlie where he can't sleep and he goes to his aunt and is talking about like his nightmares and like basically talking, finally able to kind of process all this trauma and stuff that he's had. And, you know, as a 15-year-old kid, you have all these questions like, you know, I broke the law. Am I going to go to prison? Am I going to go to jail? And it's like, no, you're not going to jail. You're not going to prison. You know, yes, you can go back to school. Like, he's asking all these questions that seem almost trivial to us, but from like a 15-year-old's perspective who doesn't, you know, quite understand or isn't an adult and is just like has had all this stuff pent up and wants to basically go back to being a kid. It was very like heart-wrenching to like hear him talk and ask those questions and like talk about his nightmares and things like that. And I think that was like a fantastic way to end this film.
I like the fact that they started the film off with running and ended it with him running. I thought that was just a really cool way to bookend all of that. The last thing I want to talk about before we get to reviews, we talked about themes a lot, right? This film deals with the theme of loneliness, survival, resilience. Are there any other themes that kind of stood out to you the most? And how effectively do you feel like this movie kind of conveyed some of those themes?
The best women have all been waitresses at some point. That's a good theme.
That is a theme. That's absolutely a theme, yeah. You know,
what the dad said at the start of the film.
Right, yeah.
People don't remember.
I like the line where he's talking about, you know, with Bonnie, and he's, you know, talking about her journey, and she talked about Red Lobster and everything, and, you know, at the end he's just like, well, you could go back to Red Lobster. And I thought that was a kind of a really like subtle way of just being like, you know, that it could be worse and you could go back to something you have done before. I don't know. It just seemed like a moment of hope. And so let's talk themes real quick before we get to reviews. Anything you guys want to toss in there as far as what this movie was trying to tell us?
Red Lobster's going bankrupt because they're endless shrimp, so she definitely cannot go back there. That is a dead end.
Cheddar Bay biscuits. I mean, come
on. When you don't have anywhere else to go, you're kind of stuck. I think that's also like a theme of, it's almost like a Rolling Stone. A Rolling Stone gathers no moss. It's just like when you're constantly on the move, like Charlie is, you're actually just stuck. You know, you don't have anything you can do but try to figure out where your next meal is and how you're going to keep living your life. And I think that's a big theme of this film is that, I mean, like, I don't think it's like a investigation into people that don't ever want to sit down in one place. It's more like when you're forced into these situations, you're stuck. And I think it's a good, like, just kind of like a foray into what it would be, like I said earlier, what it would be like to be like a homeless teenager. And I think they did a great job portraying it. So.
Yeah. I mean, when you have the think about where you're going to sleep every single day and what you're going to eat and if you're going to shower or where you're going. You don't have the luxury of hobbies or reading a book or watching a movie or things like that. Your whole life is just a constant struggle of finding the next place to sleep.
Mm-hmm. They had the great scene where he had to ask himself if he was actually homeless, right? Where he's like, "No, I'm not homeless," and the dude's like, "No, you're definitely homeless." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, how would you know at 15, right? You wouldn't. You never even thought about that before in your life." So,
well, in his head, he probably had no time to process, like, oh, like that house that my dad had. Back then, it's not really mine anymore. Like, I've left it, and obviously I can't pay the bills there. And I think he just thinks in his head, like, oh, wherever my Aunt Margie is, that's my home. And it ends up being true, actually. But at that time, he didn't know it at all. So,
yeah, well, I think a big message is that hope against like being stuck in any kind of situation. And we've seen people stuck throughout this movie in different kinds of ways. And I like how you guys have raised that even being constantly moving is a way of being stuck. Mm-hmm. So I think that a theme throughout it is having hope that things can change. I know that it's simple, but I think that carries through. I also think that this movie really wants to tell us that no man is an island and that it's best to rely on others, actually, and there's no pride or anything to be earned that's worth it by doing everything by yourself. I think that would be the other big theme that I took out of this movie, and I like both of those themes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and there's not, while we've watched a lot of A24 films and had a lot of themes, this one definitely stands out as something a little bit unique in that sense, dealing with kind of just themes in general and just the way they portrayed it. So, yeah. All right. Well, if nobody else has anything they would like to toss in, it is time for reviews. So, listeners, we like to review every single one of our A24 films from A all the way down till F, and some other random letters in between. But we're going to go ahead and start with Cole William Whitlaw Jr., or is it the third? I don't even remember.
No, it's just Gibson.
You tell me.
I'm the only
Gibson?
one.
You're not a junior or a third?
No,
he's just
no.
Gibson.
Yeah, all of my names are just from all of my other relatives, so I don't have anything that's my own.
All right. Cole, you're up first.
Middle child syndrome. What are you going to do?
Sounding like a Rolling Stone out here.
All right. I really like this film. I dig like slice of life. I like these like deeply emotional films. I think this was a very good one to watch. It was a very dreary, rainy day here in Alaska when I was watching it, so it definitely fit the whole theme and vibe. My power went out, and I had to watch it on an iPad for a little while, but still enjoyed it quite a lot. I thought it subverted my expectations in terms of story, where it was going to go and how it progressed, and it zigged every time I thought I was going to zag, so to speak, and I enjoyed that. It was 2 hours, which is, doesn't hit my 90-minute sweetness, but still enjoyed it. Overall, I think it's a very good movie. I think it's a very emotional movie, so it's not one that you're just gonna be like sitting around with your buddies or your family and be like, hey, have a family movie, let's watch this. Not gonna be like that, but I definitely think it's worth a watch. I think it kind of sheds some light on some interesting ideas and thoughts, and tells just a good story about a kid going through hard times. I don't think it reached or did anything, I would say, extraordinary for me to put it in the A category. I still think it's a very solid movie, but I don't think it's one that I'm going to be, running to all my friends or family or, people of the internet telling them that it is a much watch, top 100 type film. I think it's a B plus 24. I really enjoyed it. I think it's also good that it's one of those films that I had no expectations. I didn't know anything about it, which was surprising. And I went into it and watched it, and I really, really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Cole. I'm going to piggyback off of yours and do my review next, mostly because you mentioned something about how the surroundings of Alaska and the dreariness kind of affected the way you watch this movie. I too was affected, but not necessarily in a positive way, and meaning that I had a really bad day yesterday. I just was emotionally just had a bad day. Work was bad, life was bad. It just was not a great day. Having to sit down and watch a film at the end of my day where I was just all put together, not particularly happy. And then that film turned out to be this one, which was 2 hours of a whole lot of fuck you emotion and just like, honestly, guys, I did not enjoy watching this film. It was a great film. There was so many cool artistic elements and the story and the plot, but did I enjoy watching it? Absolutely not. I was not a happy camper. I was just kind of like angsty and angry while watching it, and was just glad when it was over. But again, it's so weird because this is probably the first one of these films where I truly was, that was a great movie, but I fucking hated it. There's something weird to be said about that when you find a film like that, where you're like, I never want to watch it ever again. I don't want to tell my friends to watch it because it's sad and it's emotional and it's going to tug on your heartstrings. But it was done well, and it was pretty, and it was something that I want to give a lot of credit to. So like my brain is on the fence of being like, man, you really didn't enjoy that, so how can you give it a good grade? Versus it was well written, it was it was well, documented, the stories were good, the characters were good, all the elements that make a good film were all there. But for me personally, I just couldn't stand it, and I was glad when it was over. So like, where does that rationalize for me? Where do you give a grade for something like that? Well, I have to give it a lot of props first and foremost because it made me feel things, right? Kelly talks about that all the time in her reviews, that it has to make you feel. Well, this certainly did that for me. It made me feel a wide variety of emotions. And I will swear, at the very final scene, I did get emotional. I tear up a little bit. Meaning I was still angry and angsty the whole time, but at the end, the emotion of what the movie was trying to get across was felt by me, and that means it was well done and something that's worth talking about. So at the end of the day, for all those reasons and more, I guess it's just going to get that B24 for me, maybe a B- because I really didn't like it while watching it. So I'm going to go with a B- to give my feelings a little bit of credence, but knowing that it is a very nice piece of art, and one of those A24 pieces that really should be lauded. So I'm glad we're giving it its piece and its day in the sun here, because I definitely feel like it deserves it. But for my part, I never want to watch this film ever again. Kelly, you're up next.
Okay. Sorry you had a bad day. I hope today's going better.
It is. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I definitely think that this movie is like a good one to study for anyone who wants to make movies. It's a great way to kind of get across kind of simple messages with a good emotional impact, as well as a great way to not go away a movie typically would go, but without it just being like way out there. So I feel like it's a movie like worth studying if you want to make films. I think that there's good juxtaposition characters is what I was calling them. Like, nobody's a stereotype. Everyone is complicated. Everyone has like two things going on in them. I already mentioned wholesome scumbag dad, but we've also got straight talking
gruff
mentor, like rough mentor type.
Yeah.
So each of them I feel like have opposites that attract and make for more complicated characters. Avoid stereotypes. I found every character to be likable, with there really being no villain in this movie, which is an impressive feat of writing. As I mentioned, I think that the editing was really well done, good pacing. Another reason I just feel like this movie should be studied by any filmmakers. And like Kevin said, and what I care about most is, did the movie make me care? And it definitely did. Grabbed me emotionally, carried me throughout, and it taught me things about the horse racing industry without it being overwhelming. It was just enough to be interesting and all I needed to know to carry the story forward. And I appreciated that. So everything's going right for it, including all these other things that I've mentioned about the movie. But I'm going to have to rate this as good as a movie can be without reaching the it factor. The it factor for me is that I don't think I'm ever going to revisit this movie as much as I enjoyed it and have spoke its praises. It's just not complicated enough, campy enough, stylistically interesting enough or different, or like tickling me psychologically enough that I want to come back to this movie, sing its praises, everything else. So as good as a movie can get without pushing it to that next level. I'm going to rate Lean on Pete with a B24.
All right.
That's up to you, Eric.
All right. Well, all of your reviews actually gave me a lot of food for thought about how we review films in general. Like, we all bring our personal biases into film, and if we go into a film and we don't really have much to do with or like relation to the main character, then we might think of it a little less. Like, I don't think any of us have been homeless. I think if somebody has watched this and they've been homeless, it might have hit them like right in the right spot, and it would have really carried it home for them. Like, we reviewed Baby Reindeer a few weeks ago. I resonated with that miniseries a lot, and so it probably just hit me a little harder than other people. And then, like Kevin, you were saying you had a bad day. Sometimes it's just like when you watch a film, your own personal like feelings, whether you can help it or not, get into your watching of a film too. So, as film reviewers, like, we try to leave it at the door, but, at times, sometimes you can't do that. So I still think this film, when you're reviewing films, you got to look at cinematography, writing, acting, directing. And this film did hit the good mark in all of it, but not the great or extraordinary mark in all of it. And yeah, like I said, maybe if and this has nothing to do with like the film or the filmmaker. Yeah, maybe if it hit me more in a personal spot, maybe I would put it up to the A category. But for me, it's just going to get a B because I just thought it was all very good, but not, amazing or anything. And I mean, like, for example, Moonlight, I feel like there's probably people that watch that that don't have as much relation to it, but then they like still can just appreciate it for what it is. Or Ex Machina too. Like, none of us work at Google and are in the AI scape, but we're definitely like, we watch that film and we're like, oh my God, this makes me think so much about everything and where we're going as a species and artificial intelligence. So, I think just the subject matter this film tackled, and it just didn't get it into the A category or extraordinary category for me. So, yep, it'll just get a B for me.
All right, folks, and that'll wrap up our reviews for the 2017 A24 Lean on Pete. Once again, thank you so much for listening. If you're here at this point of the podcast, we really do thank you. If you could, tell your friends, family, rate us a 5-star review on this or whatever you capture your podcasts are. And if you leave us a review, we'll read it on air. That's right, we'll put your name out there with us. Or if you ask us nicely, we might even bring you on for an episode and ask you all sorts of questions about your favorite A24 film. But until that time, I'm Kevin K. Konachek, and thank you for joining another episode of A24 on the Rocks.
A24.